Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the second session of fourth unit, that is on MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises. So, what we have discussed in the earlier session or the earlier lecture, it was all about the business environment in India. Okay, where micro, small and medium enterprises have grown, then role of these MSME sector in the economic growth, in employment, as well as overall economics of the country. So it plays a major as well as an important role. Later, central government based or state government based various schemes or institutional supports which is given to the MSME sector that were seen, and out of many such institution support we saw 6 major supports which included support for consultancy, for technological development, for finance, as well as in various permissions, for example in licensing, in getting land, labor, electricity connection, water, and any of the municipal connection for setup of the enterprise. So with this, we also discussed a small point of the government policies, okay, which had listed some objectives or different policies which take care of different points related to the micro, small and medium enterprises. So I think in a couple of minutes this was a small overview of the earlier session. So we will continue, and before we take up the remaining portion of this unit, I am just going back to the first point, which is about the definition of micro, small and medium enterprises. The definition comprises of 2 different definitions for a same enterprise. That is, if the enterprise is a micro enterprise, if it is a manufacturing unit, the definition has a different level. If it is a service sector based enterprise, then the definition has a different meaning. So what you can see on the slide is as per the definition of MSME Act, which was published in 2006. This act or these definitions were revised since 2018, and the latest, the recent economic reforms and the recent financial declarations which were done by the current government, we have received a very latest definition which is based on the investment or which is based on the turnover of an enterprise. So on that lines, what we will see is the basic definition and how it is categorized as per investment and turnover for a micro, small and a medium enterprise. So the table, how it explains the definition is, if the nature of the activity of the enterprise is investment in plant and machinery, excluding land and building, for enterprise which is engaged in manufacturing or production, processing of goods or materials, if the investment does not exceed 25 lakhs per annum, then it is called a micro enterprise. Similarly, a small enterprise is defined as the enterprise whose investment in plant and machinery, excluding the land and building, engaged in manufacturing, production, processing, is above 25 lakhs but does not exceed 500 lakhs. this is a small enterprise. In the similar way, if it is exceeds 500 lakhs of rupees per annum, but does not exceeds 1000 lakhs of rupees per annum, then it is considered as a medium enterprise. Or you can also write in other words, for a medium enterprise, if the investment in plant and machinery, except the land and building for production, processing of material or of the product or the goods, it exceeds 5 crores, but it is below 10 crores. So if we want to talk instead of lakhs, if the limits are to be talked in the amount of crores of rupees per annum, even it can be rewritten. You can see in another column for the definition, wherein the investment is in equipment, land and building. The first one was talking about investment in plant machinery and in processing and process of the goods. If it is a micro enterprise which invests in land and machinery in equipments, and it is only for rendering services, it is not a production, then the range is lowered down. It is a micro enterprise if it doesn't exceed 10 lakhs of rupees. It is a medium enterprise if this investment is between above 10 lakhs, below 2 crores of rupees, and if it is between 2 to 5 crores of rupees, then that is a medium, earlier one is a small, and then 2 to 5 crores of rupees per annum for service is a medium enterprise. So this was as per the MSME Act of 2006. We got it changed, or it was revised till 2018, which was the last edited version or the corrected version of MSME Act. But recently, maybe it may not be a couple of weeks old, what we have is the revised MSME classification given by the current government of India. So I will just write that table for you. So if the criteria is investment in plant and machinery for production, if this is the criteria, then if it is a manufacturing industry, so let me give a table for micro, if it is small and medium, and then for so the investment should be 25 lakhs or for a small it should be less than rupees 5 crore, and for a medium it should be less than rupees 10 crores. If it is a service, okay, if I just check that this is what is the current, okay, this is what is the current range of the definition, the revised, okay, so what I will just prepare. The same for the revised portion. What it talks about is they have clubbed the manufacturing and sector in the same bucket. So here investment is less than 1 crore and the turnover is less than 5 crores of rupees. For a small scale, the investment is less than rupees 10 crore and turnover is less than 50 crores. Similarly, for a medium enterprise, less than 20 crore, turnover less than 100 crore. So if I just take up the comparison for a small scale industry, investment in equipments, land, building and service sector, if it is below 2 crores of rupees, then it is a small enterprise based on the criteria of services. But now the same, instead of below 2 crores, the limit has been extended to 10 crores of rupees. Okay. So this is the latest one which was given as a doubt or as a homework. What were the different limits when it was revised in 2018 and what it was revised in 2015? You can always go through the internet, you can Google it out and you can know the limits again. So from as tiny as 10 lakhs of rupees till increasing it up to 25 and then up to 1 crores of rupees. Now both the manufacturing units as well as service units for MSMEs, they have been clubbed in a single definition. This is the latest one. But when we are representing these definitions as answers, you need to identify or highlight the definition is as per the guidelines of which MSME Act or which MSME Act of the year. So specifying the year is very much important when you are representing the definition. So I think this definitions as per criterias for different small, micro as well as medium enterprises with the different range in investments either in for a manufacturing or for a service sector. So this table is very much clear where you can see we have the oldest one and the latest one in front of us. So this was about the definition of micro, small and medium enterprises. We will shift back what we had discussed earlier. Government different aims, targets for government policies for MSMEs was what discussed. I had stopped wherein now the industries also came up with some of their policies or the enterprises came up with some of their policies wherein they reciprocated back to these various government policies. So we will see them. And that is comes under the government policies. And after those industry or enterprise policies, the last point that we will see is the effect or impact of liberalization, privatization and globalization on MSME sector, wherein we will see two important words, that is GATT and World Trade Organization, that is WTO. Okay, so the industrial policies, the points which are listed here, after having understood that the government has different policies and these policies were revised, upgraded in the different 5-year plans which government used to publish and used to revise after every 5 years. In the same lines, how industries, or these not only the micro, small and medium enterprises, the overall industrial sector, which includes the large sector as well as multinationals, how they reciprocated back. But in this, the important role of reciprocating, accepting, was done by the MSME sector, which has really impacted over the employment rate, the standard of living, per capita income, and as well as the economic of the region, the sector, as well as the country. So the first point, from the industry side, these enterprises, they actively participated in developing their infrastructure. So there were tech SOC, or for example, if we consider the state of Karnataka, technological or technical consultancy service of Karnataka, the state unit or the state institution, tech SOC, for the support of infrastructure or technological development. These enterprises, they also reciprocated, they participated actively in the development of infrastructure. So it may be in expanding the building size, it may be expanding or procuring more land and setting up sister enterprises. This was the response or active participation shown back by the industries. And MSME gave more emphasis on these infrastructure developments. The third point, they also identified in developing their growth centers. It means it can be the growing of skilled laborers, it can be growing the number of employees, it can be growing their investment or turnover, or it may be growing the profit margin. So apart from that, when we will talk about globalization, wherein the word export or export quality products was introduced into MSME sector, MSME, from the different government policies, they also worked on improving their export value products. This was a response back. Industries also had measures in conserving and optimizing the utilization of resources and materials which they used to procure. Instead of exhaustive exploitation, they optimized so that the environment is not disturbed or it is not affected. The MSME also involved in encouraging use of regenerated or reusable and non-conventional energy sources. So that is where we can see even the innovations into solar energy and how they can use the natural resources like water and wind energy. These innovations came into place so that these non-conventional energy sources provide them the source of energy for their industry to work on, rather than depending on the government who is providing every facility for the smooth running of the industry. Next was, instead of just being limited to the region, they improved their public sector undertakings. So these industries, they entered the national market, they tried to explore the global market, and to increase and expand their customer and client base, they took up public sector undertakings. They started joining the large scale sector so that they can make the best use of these government policies. Second last point was support authorities or these government agencies with suggestions for simplification in rules and regulations. So once different labor laws were applied on the MSME sector, these sector, they also were supporting the authorities back in giving suggestions so that what could be the best change which can be brought, or what could be the best simplification made in the rules and regulation which will help the government as well as these enterprises. And the last was, once the production or the service sector under this MSME sector was functioning with all the support, they also helped in providing market assistance to the local market or to the national market. So this is how industries reciprocated back to the government policies or support which was given centrally or which was given by the state government. In the same lines, when we talk about these policies, government as well as the industry sector, they both together, they came up with industrial policy resolutions. So along with the 5-year plans, initially these 5-year plans were more concerned about the agricultural sector. Their reforms were more towards the farmers and the agricultural product. Lately, these resolutions combined by industry as well as the government authorities, they started giving IPRs, industrial policy resolutions, which revived the government policies towards the MSME sector. So this was started definitely after the freedom, and the first one was in 1948, wherein they talked about shortages of raw materials, labors, the market and security of the MSME sectors which had started during those years. And then from there an institute was instituted in 1959 which talked about rural industrial projects, industrial estate projects. There were different projects and facilities or schemes introduced by the government, and this was during the third 5-year plan. So the first 2 5-year plans, if we look from these points, that was more concerned about agriculture. So after a decade of independence, the industrial sector was given importance, and in the 5-year plans, the IPR resolutions were revived. So in 1977, for the first time in this sector, cottage industries was given some importance. They were identified as a separate enterprise. Then apart from micro, even tiny sectors were also identified wherein their investment is much below, let us say, a manufacturing sector whose limit is less than half of what limit has been decided for a micro enterprise. So such enterprises, let us say it can be 5 lakhs per annum. Of that limit, such tiny industries were identified, introduced, defined under these resolutions. Well, a very important industrial policy resolution was of 1991, which was a game-changing resolution, and it came up with a new small enterprise policy, which was introduced by the government, the ruling government of that time. And if I want to say, it was the time where the then finance minister, later who became the Prime Minister of India, it is Mr. Manmohan Singh or Dr. Manmohan Singh, who as a finance minister, he came up with a very wonderful industrial policy in 1991, which had also attracted foreign direct investments, and it really changed the market, the industry environment in India. And you can see a national equity fund, there was something which was introduced. There were technology development centers developed in these organizations, and that is the time in July 1991 when liberalization, privatization and globalization was introduced. After that, there was slight or a very few modifications made, but since 1991, the system or these resolutions which were introduced, they are still considered to be giving the highest impact. So now we are close to 3 decades since a game-changing policy resolution was introduced, and in these 3 decades, till the latest reforms, it has really grown the MSME sector in all dimensions. So different policy resolutions, different schemes. Okay, these are the points which talk about government policies as well as the industrial policy resolutions. Okay, so the last point or the last topic under this unit, in short, it is more about liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And since 1991, these 3 words got much importance. And we can see LPG, or the liberalization, privatization, globalization process started in July 1991 along with the IPR 1991, and it attracted new areas of development and foreign direct investments. And since then, it's been 3 decades, the country's growth rate has been stabilized. The industry sector has grown in multiple dimensions. It has impacted the economy of the country. They have a good share in the employment exchange for the country. They have improved the standard of living. They have changed how the market is working. They have changed different customers' demands and the way clients look towards not only the MSME sector, but also the total industrial sector as a unit. So what we see here, we will just go through the 3 words one by one. So what is liberalization? This made import of some scarce raw material or materials or products which were not available in the country. So it helped in liberalizing the regulations on the domestic economic transactions as well as on the global transactions, where, for example, one micro enterprise setup which is somewhere in the rural part of the state Karnataka, and because of the earlier transaction or economic regulations, they were unable to get the raw materials maybe from the another corner of the country from a different state. But under the liberalization reforms, they were able to take or get those scarce raw materials for their production unit. So this is how liberalization helped us, and the best example is where electronic and the computer industries, they have capitulated on this liberalization scheme. Next word, which is privatization. The word itself means that a lot of things were privatized. Those who were getting support from different government policies, from various schemes, or from the central or state institutional supports, there was a limit or a restriction that they will not go, or they will not privatize themselves. They fall under the various government rules with different restrictions in exports, in production and marketing. But with this new scheme or introduction of privatization, it helped the small scale industries or these MSME sectors to grow largely. And this new reform allowed private players to enter the market or to communicate and do business with the sector, so that not only raw materials, the market, sales, customers, even the product can be privatized. The tariffs reforms can be redefined, and this helped the sector in growing its profit margin. So this is the privatization. What we can see is, as an best example, is the telephone production unit. Earlier we had only one such production unit, which was in Bangalore, and because of privatization, the foreign production units or the foreign products in the field of different telephone units or telephone setups, they were allowed to interact with these Indian MSME sector, large sectors, and this not only introduced competition among them, but the customers in the country, they were able to have all these imported telephone sets which they could purchase and use at their houses. So with privatization, the competition among MSME sectors as well as the competition of these sectors with the global network or with global production units was initiated, and as a push or in a positive sense, there were many industries who really they have grown globally from India. So there are many products which are now exported more and they have demand more globally, and they are really doing wonderfully in the global market. This is about the privatization which started from 1991, and now we have nearly covered 3 decades since the foreign investments have started and our markets were exposed and opened for the global. Another example here is about the insurances also. So rather than only having the well-known and the standard oldest insurance policy which was given by the government, that is LIC, life insurance, now we can see list of different insurances and different insurance sector which is available. Okay, so globalization, what it means, it made our own MSME sector or the local made or nationally made products or goods available even to the global market. So globalization helped in setting up many MSMEs. It made possible for export of goods to the other countries or the continents. For example, it helped in introducing entrepreneurs or such enterprises in the pharmaceutical sectors, especially steel and IT. And that is where, if we see from 1990s, there was a boom in the IT sector, especially when we see in India. And not only this, even we have a bio IT sector or a bio IT industry which has flourished really well in our country. So globalization has helped the sector not only to grow in the nation, but it also made them available or recognized globally. So liberalization, privatization and globalization, they helped in a big growth of industrial setup and entrepreneurial activities in the country. So through this, what we see is 2 different organizations or treaties which were introduced. So the first one is GATT, called as General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, since 1947, and we had 123 countries across the globe who were part of this treaty, and their challenges or their objective was to have a general agreement on various points related to the industrial development. So the challenges were uneven tariffs or high tariffs which were given or which were there for few countries. It may be for developing or developed countries. The objective of this treaty was they can have a normalized tariff so that the import and export will function smoothly among these different countries. E-commerce was a challenge that time, but now what we see is that the e-commerce has really helped these industry to grow, and the best example that we have are these online purchases that we make. Either it can be at the retail market, or it can be different clothes, it can be gadgets, electronic goods, it can be food, it can be grocery, you name it. Everything is already now linked with e-commerce. Agricultural commodities, how the agricultural product or the raw material for a proper agricultural production, how they can be exchanged with a normalized and optimized tariff with a proper trade law. Well, some dangerous materials like the nuclear, narcotics or drugs materials whose export and import should have proper trade laws, because these are required for pharmaceutical companies and many big pharmaceutical industries who produce medicines for the global consumption. Different subsidies, different trade restrictive practices, okay, solving the trade disputes in the international business, okay, removing the trade blocks, it can be regionally or between two countries, okay, how to solve the bilateral trade agreements between different countries, and having a proper information exchange. So GATT since few decades is working on all these points so as to have a smooth trade exchange or trade laws and normalized tariffs across the globe. Another organization, which is World Trade Organization, instituted on 1st January of 1995, okay, which is considered to be the successor of GATT now. So this organization also contained the earlier 123 countries, and they then included more 30 to 40 countries in this organization, so that the global market or the business around the world happens with ease, and all the reforms, if we talk about the MSME sector at our country, their reforms, the government policies, initiations by these industries, all these happen smoothly in line with the trade laws, with the tariffs which are defined globally under WTO. So this is how the MSME sector, okay, is all about, right from its definition and about the policies, about the support from center and state, and about the different reforms and its business or its link with the global market. So a small recap that we can do. Which I did at the start of this session. We saw 13 different points under the business environment, how the challenges or some positive points both are visible under the business environment in India. It can be maybe not getting skilled laborers, it can be not having a proper labor laws, or regarding to the laws for salaries. It can be a very slow technological development. It can be very challenging or competitive market. It can be vibrant customer demands. So with these 13 points, that is how the business environment in India looks like. For that, how the Indian government or different state governments, they are encouraging micro, small and medium enterprises, how these agencies are developing the entrepreneurial process so that the MSME sector can take care of these challenges. Then the various important roles played by the MSME sector. It can be for the quality of the product, it can be customer demand, it can be market demand, it plays a very important role in the supply chain management under the country, how they have expanded their quality of the products or goods which matches the export level, so they are now connected globally. So with this various important roles, how important MSME sector is for any country, not only India, and different institutional supports. For example, National Small Industry Corporation, it can be a state finance corporation like Karnataka State Finance Corporation, it can be an Industrial Development Bank of India, it can be Technological Consultancy for Karnataka, it can be Karnataka Industrial Area Development Board, which is giving permissions or supporting through land, through electricity connections. And these were the different institutions which we have seen. The year of establishment, the different objectives of this industries, and what are the roles these institutions support or these institutions play in the MSME sector. What are the ways they give different schemes and different help. And then today we saw government policies, the industrial policies, we saw different industrial policy resolutions, the game changer IPR of 1991. Then we saw the impact of this IPR 1991, which introduced liberalization, privatization and globalization. And one by one, what these three words or these reforms mean for the MSME sector. And under the globalization, since decades we have a general agreement for trade and tariffs, because of which the global market or the business around the world, how it has been normalized. The successor for GATT is World Trade Organization, which have expanded since 1995. It's been 2 decades. They are taking care of the global business, wherein what has been highlighted is the micro, small and medium enterprise or the MSME sector plays a very important role. So, and the last thing is about the various definition for MSME sector, which is categorized under different criteria. So with the MSME Sector Act, which has been introduced and revised by the Government of India time to time from 2006 till the latest in 2019, we see various investment limits which were defined and revised for the definition of this sector. So this is about the unit 4, which is the MSME sector as well as the various institutional support which is available. So this concludes the fourth unit with a quick recap where we saw or we have discussed this sector, or we have discussed MSME at length, and in a quick recap we saw only 6 institutional supports, of which couple of them are national institutions and the remaining ones are state institutions. So giving importance or highlighting the state of Karnataka, we saw the financial supports, the industrial development banks, industrial area development only for the state of Karnataka when they were established, and how they are supporting for different projects or different industrial developments in the state of Karnataka. With this, the fourth unit under the subject of management and entrepreneurship is explained here. The next session we will see, or we will start with the 5th and the last unit, which talks about the project reports, or the different projects or different applications which is submitted on a single window scheme to these institution supports, and how these institutions, they reciprocate back with support and helping in not only establishing, procuring, also they help with employments and initiating or starting the production, at least initially. So what is that about a project report? We will see in the next the last unit. Then for such enterprises or an industry, what is about venture capital? We will see what is venture capital and what is about the business plans that are done. We will go through some different type of studies or feasibility studies which are done while giving permissions or while establishing an enterprise or a industry. So that in a nutshell is what the 5th unit will talk about, which will be discussed in the next session. Thank you.